Asante sana mtazamaji kwa kuendelea kutufuatilia dakika 23 baada ya saa 12 Afrika Mashariki. Ukiwa unatumia TV basi taratibu tunaingia katika mdahalo mkubwa sana. Hasa leo tunazungumzia masuala ya kubadilisha ardhi yetu hasa kwa kuweka nyasi ambayo tunasema kwamba ni native kabisa. Kwako Ngina.
All right, and to talk to us about semi-arid and arid land restoration, we do have the pleasure of being joined by Dr. David Amudave, who is the Executive Director of Biovision Africa Trust. Thank you so very much for making time to be with us today.
Now, it's a pleasure to be here.
Karibu sana. All right, just jumping straight into the conversation, more often than not, when we're talking about restoring our ecosystem, we focus on tree planting. And we do have a lot of holidays that have been set aside for tree planting, which is a good thing, but it almost feels like that is the only thing that we focus on. But when you look at the feature of the day, then we are learning that not every area is for growing trees, and we also have grass, which is part of the restoration of the ecosystem. Please talk to us about the importance of having that grass, and also, is it high time that we start pushing other forms of ecosystem restoration apart from just growing trees?
Thank you very much for hosting me in your studio today and to talk about this very important topic on restoration of arid and semi-arid lands. Trees are very important, we know that, for various purposes in terms of wood, timber, for construction, and so on. But in terms of how we can restore our degraded areas, we need more than trees. Soils are very important in degraded areas, and the soils need to have good ground cover. The soils need to have good carbon, and carbon is a very important component of soil for it to be able to be healthy to support crop production. Right. And therefore, when we talk of ecosystem range management of degraded lands, we are looking at using trees which are appropriate, using grasses, using forbs and shrubs, all these in a mixture of planting using various techniques. They help to restore the fertility of the soils. Right. They help to conserve the soils, to prevent erosion. And they also help to give a balance between plants and animals. So focusing on trees alone is not the end game of how we can restore our arid and semi-arid lands.
All right.
We need fodder, which is very important, as we know that in arid and semi-arid areas, these are the foundational areas for pastoralists. Livestock is very important, and therefore we need to ensure that we have grasses in arid and semi-arid areas that livestock, for people who live in such areas, can still be able to sustain, to be alive, to be sold for cash. For those that, like camels, that have to give milk, this milk to be given to the animals. So fodder and grasses become very important as part of the ecosystem.
Naam, tushikilie papo hapo kuhusiana na namna ya amezungumza kuhusiana na tutatunza vipi. Sasa kuna wakati ambapo tunaona kwamba kuna wanyama wanaingia kule kuharibu zile nyasi, tunaita native species. Tutazuia vipi kuhakikisha kwamba wale wanyama hawaharibu?
Asante sana, hilo ni swali nzuri na ningependa kulijibu hivi. Kwanza ni kitu ya muhimu sana tudhamini native species. Native species ni zile grasses, for example, hata trees ambazo zimekuwa katika sehemu hizo kwa miaka mingi. Na mara nyingi kwa sababu watu tumekuwa wengi, uharibifu wa mazingira pia umekuwepo, some of those native species have actually disappeared. And now efforts are being made to see how do we restore our degraded areas using the native species of grasses, forbs, and shrubs that we've had before. And to do this, this is part of the work that some of us are doing. We have some work that various partners have come together under a project called PEP, which is People, Environment, and Plants. Under this project, we are working with different partners who have expertise in the area of range management, in the area of extension education, in the area of community land use planning. We have come together with various organizations here in Kenya, University of Nairobi. In Isiolo, we have CETRAD, which is a bilateral institution between the government of Kenya and the government of Switzerland. And we also have in Tanzania another set of partners, TOFARI, which is the Tanzania Forestry Research Institute, as well as Tanzania Livestock Research Institute. all these partners, including BioVision Africa Trust, we've looked at areas as cases we can actually protect such areas. One, to restore with native grasses, which will ensure that the soils are restored, reduce erosion. We have flora, which is flora and fauna, which is animals and plants, a balance of that, which is important not only for livestock, but also for crops, because also pastoralists, some of them are able to grow actually crops. Now, to do this within our program, we have also felt there is need to work with the communities. Communities are very important. In terms of their knowledge, this is why we need to know what are those species that used to be very effective, even during dry periods, there would still be some grass for the livestock. Some of them have been lost completely, but we are happy to note that some are still there, and we are bringing this together, using the knowledge of the rural communities and combining with scientific knowledge from research institutions. And there is huge power within the two sets of knowledge, from the communities, from the scientists. And once we do this, we are saying, let's protect those areas that we want to regain, to restore. Sometimes I always use the word transforming from brown to green lands. So we want to make sure that the brown lands of the ASALs become green, supportive of the livelihoods of people. And what we are doing, therefore, is to ensure that fencing is done so that those areas we are regenerating, bringing back to life the areas in terms of pasture, in terms of grasses, and a diversity of them. For information, let me say this. One of the reasons why the ASAL areas tend to suffer a lot is because we tend to have maybe just one type of grass or two. But research has shown in many countries, in North America, Australia, that when you use a diverse range of types of grasses, which have different traits, characteristics, they enable such an area to have a very rich ecosystem, which allows for the grasses to grow at different levels, and that provides pasture, fodder for livestock at different times. And some of it can actually be able to sustain even droughts. You know very well droughts are a key killer to livelihoods of people in ASAL areas. So if we can have species of grasses that are resistant to drought, that means they can still be available to be used to feed the livestock of pastoralists, then it means you are going for a set and mixtures of grasses, a diverse range of them, which make ASAL areas reasonably productive for the people who live there, for the livestock, for the people themselves, and also for the environment as well. Right. But protection of such sites, like community conservancies, fencing them very nicely, it helps to stop animals that might come in and actually feed on this. Secondly, it also helps for people. When they discuss as communities, how best can they utilize these precious resources of grasses? Then you find the communities are able to look at, hey, let's come up with proper grazing management regimes. Because one, we have to avoid overgrazing. So that means also people can look at how much livestock can we actually take care of to ensure that we still have pasture to sustain the kind of size of livestock we have. Secondly, we also want to ensure that the grasses are not depleted too quickly. And especially in drought-prone areas. If you don't have a good community management system of having controlled grazing, then you'll find you've exhausted the food that is available for the livestock, which is fodder, and very soon you find the communities are losing their livestock. Right. So controlled grazing, also using very organized, coordinated community land use planning. The communities need to be involved in this because this is their resource. What we do as people who come in is to use the expertise we know, the science from other areas, and we work with the communities, putting their knowledge and our knowledge together to provide suitable and viable solutions for such communities.
Now, besides overgrazing and, of course, the attack from animals that attack the grass, please talk to us about what other factors could lead to the degradation of the ecosystem where now we are losing our grass. What are the factors coming to play?
Yes, first of all, that's a very good question. One of the biggest threats to the destruction of ecosystem is uncontrolled grazing. First, uncontrolled grazing and also having large herds of livestock which go beyond what the size of resources we have can afford. We call it the carrying capacity. So we have to look at what size of livestock, how many livestock do we need in a certain area, such that people can actually utilize the resources in a manner that helps them to continue to rely on that resource. So overstocking, that means having too many livestock than what that area can support, is one of the greatest dangers for ecosystem degradation.
Is there a metric to measure that, to tell you that this what you have is too much animals for this space of land that you have? Ama, what is the assumption for you to get to know that?
Excellent.
Yeah.
And this is where we bring in the science, because with the science we can determine how much fodder each livestock can consume and how much we have, and for how long can we have the livestock feeding on this kind of fodder. And secondly, the communities themselves, for a very long time, they have accumulated knowledge, and they can actually see for the size of livestock we have with this kind of grasses, it can go for 3 months or 6 months. If it's more than that, it can't sustain. Okay. So using what the communities know from the experience, and also for us from research work, from science, checking how much the livestock can feed and how much is available, it is possible to determine the kind of size of livestock, that's how many animals you can actually keep. That is what we call the carrying capacity. So it's possible. There are tools that can be used, community tools as well as scientific tools, to determine the size of livestock.
Asante sana David Amudavi kwa maelezo yako makubwa kabisa. Tunamiminika maarifa hapa studioni, tunakufahamisha kila siku kwamba tutakuletea wataalamu wanaofahamu mengi sana, lakini sasa tuchukue mapumziko. Tukirejea tutamuuliza kuhusiana na mambo ya utotoleshaji au kile tunaita breeding kwa lugha ya King'eng'e.